Please silence your cell phones, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Ocean Highway and Port Authority to order for Wednesday, October 13th, 2021 at 6 o'clock. Let's stand for the invocation and the pledge. Mr. Franklin.
Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us all together here. Lord, let us do the things that would be right in your eyes and all, Lord, and what's right for the country and for this county. And Lord, be with our servicemen as they're all overseas and all watch over them and guide them and be with all of us. In Jesus' holy name we pray.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance to the flag right now.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Presenter, roll call, please.
Mr. Krakowski, sorry. Mr. Laporte. Commissioner Hill.
Here.
Commissioner Hannah.
Here.
Commissioner Franklin.
Here.
Vice Chairman Cole.
Here.
Chairman Foley.
Present.
Thank you.
First thing we'll do, comments from the audience. I have several that want to talk tonight. Or else I'll let you start. Come up. No procedure.
I do. Chip Ross, 610 North 3rd Street, Florida. Two issues. The first is, if you all know at this point, there was a small cruise ship that came to the port on weekend. There's certainly nothing wrong with that. It's allowed the use of the city land use. In fact, the city also has a small cruise ship that ports there. The only two concerns I would have is number one, and I provided it to you, and in your in the deeds, the property that was transferred, there's something called a reverter clause, and that prohibits cruise ships, or at least the terminal. And I would just hope out of an abundance of caution that we would connect with the successor of Container Corporation of America, which is West Rock, and make sure that they won't purpose to be doing that. Number two, I would hope that if this is continued under the port operating agreement, you would get revenues from this new revenue. Second issue is that we're operating on the Temple website where their bond provides a very extensive quarterly financial statement, which is far more than has ever been provided to the commissioners. And I would ask that question why that is provided to the bondholders and not to the port commissioners. Those are my two comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Cossack.
Tammy Cossack, 322 North 3rd. 3 items. Commissioner Ross also hit on some of them, but we all know about the cruise ship that was there this weekend. And I had 3 things concerning that. The simultaneous nature of the cargo at the Summers Isles being unloaded, along with the trolley and the passengers being shuttled back and forth on the port property. I don't know what protocol is for that, but that was a little bit concerning. I had several neighbors come up to me and say what's happening at the port because there's top loaders and things happening along with the trolley. And along those same lines, there's a question about, is there a security breach of that? There's been a lot of talk about photos being taken, and they shouldn't be taken because that is a breach of security on port property. And I mean, we all know when there's passengers, they're in the port's an incredible place. People love to take photos. So you've got passengers that are very interested, and we don't know who those passengers might be, or if somebody might have a nefarious reason to be on the port ground. So I think we really need to think hard about that. And the last thing is also the deed restriction. And in my experience, deed restrictions run with the land. and they're very hard to remove. So I don't think that we can say that this is an old situation and it's something that might not be in existence any longer. And it's just from 1993, and it says very clearly, it doesn't just make a distinction about being a port terminal. It says this conveyance is subject to the restriction that the lands hereby conveyed can only be used for a commercial seaport for cargo. And then it has the reversion clause also. And I would just posit that if we lost the port due to operator negligence, that's going to come back to you guys. It's not going to be the neighbors saying we don't want a port here. This is serious, and we have to know what we can and can't do out there and abide by what is in the deed and the restriction. And I think that risk of possibly losing the port is serious and something that should be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have a presentation from Dale Martin, City Manager. Martin.
Good evening, Commissioners. Dale Martin, City Manager for New Beach, 204 Ash Street.
Good evening.
What I provided to you was interest in some of the history regarding the efforts to relocate the channel. I attempted to give you the packets in a chronological order. To follow along, the first document is actually a portion of what is commonly referred to as the Water Resources Development Act of 2000. And as a result of that act, Congress authorized the realignment of the channel. And to the best of my knowledge, that congressional legislation has never been repealed, so it still remains in full force and effect. Following that is a presentation that's dated 2018, presented to the City Commission by Applied Technology and Management, that details the history leading up to 2018 of relocating the channel. Channel has not been dredged or utilized since the mid-1980s. Following that document, there's a series of correspondence, all of which is related to the city's efforts to rebuild the marina following Hurricane Matthew of 2016. The Corps of Engineers required the city to secure a waiver or a variance because of the proximity of the attenuator to the navigational channel. The northern attenuator sits only 6 feet off of the navigational channel. Corps guidance is 100 feet separation between the two. The correspondence goes on to say our informal conversations with the Corps at the time were that we'll give you this variance to reconstruct the marina, but they will entertain no further applications for the marina until the channel is relocated. And that includes a worst case scenario, if another hurricane destroys the marina, the city would not be allowed to rebuild the marina in the current configuration. We did ask the Corps of Engineers what direction we should follow, and their direction was to request the sponsor of the channel, which is the Ocean Highway Port Authority, to request the relocation of the channel. Then you have, there was some conversation a couple of years ago between the city and this board. You have also included in there is what I believe to be the last exchange of an interlocal agreement. And I believe this was the city's response to the last OPA review. And the key difference in that, as highlighted in there, is that when the city received this, it was that the city would accept the financial responsibility for dredging the relocated channel at the request of OPA. And the city commission offered or opted to strike that language and say that if the Corps requested the dredging of the channel, the city would still be responsible for that. But it would be the Corps request and not OPA request. To the best of my knowledge, that's when the communication between both boards stopped. I did secure a new letter of support from Mr. Mark Holmans of Rainier Advanced Materials supporting the relocation of the channel. That document is included in the packet. And finally, I did ask Mr. Rob Sims, who prepared the 2018 presentation, for his insights, if anything else had changed since that presentation. And he indicated that one of the comments in there is that there's a amount of material that had to be dredged from the way near turning basin would be so significant that would be the responsibility of the Corps, that the Corps would in all likelihood not dredge the federal channel because they would have to redredge that channel. And so in all likelihood, the Corps will have no future intent of dredging that channel. So the city is interested with the success of the marina and expanding north. We did have I think one of the documents included in your packet was also a proposed reconfiguration of the marina to the north. The city had previously received a grant to expand. It was a 50% match grant, so the city was going to provide $1.5 million, and the state would provide $1.5 million to extend the docks 300 feet to the north. Due to the timing and the lack of action on behalf of the city has since returned that grant or rejected it, informed the granting agency that we would not be able to provide it in a timely manner to use that money elsewhere. The city would like to again pursue that option, but for us to even consider expanding the marina northward requires the relocation of the channel. So again, on behalf of the city and the city commission, I ask that you at least reconsider opening that dialogue again, or at least offering your support to relocate the channel.
Well, I don't think we've ever had a problem with relocating the channel, and the only dredging part would have been to the south. Is that correct? Where Ray and his property.
Yes, sir. If you in the ATM presentation, he does have. I think that's right. But there's a series of alternatives for the channel realignment, and shows what some of the depths were. And again, admittedly, those depths may have changed since 2018. But yes, that was part of the only dredging that would occur is south of the port turning basin where the port conducts operations.
I think we sent an interlocal agreement a couple of years ago to the city saying we would be in favor of doing that. We wouldn't have any problem with it, but you had to hold us harmless as far as if the channel ever had to get moved back, you would take that responsibility and we wouldn't have to end up paying for that because we couldn't pay for that.
And I believe that language to that effect is included in the interlocal agreement.
It's in that,
That's in
yes,
your
I just
packet.
read it. It's in that interlocal agreement, and I don't have any problem with it. Now, whatever we need to do to get this done, I'm all in favor of it.
The only thing I remember going back and forth with this was they on the packet you even gave us, it's even stricken where it says in there where the United States Army Corps of Engineers whereas required to accommodate maritime traffic into and out of the port. That's where the city was stopping it. They didn't want to be responsible for it.
Yeah, we wouldn't be asking you to dredge our part of the channel, our turning basin or something in front of our.
Correct. The way that I understand the interlocal agreement is that from your port turning basin north, that remains your responsibility.
Right.
Should the Corps ever request the channel south of that point be dredged, this interlocal agreement says that the city would be responsible for that.
We've recently had our part of that dredge from our wharf north.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, we're getting ready to do some maintenance dredging in that area too, because it's filled back in a little bit. So what do you need us to do?
I would respectfully request that you add this as an agenda item for a future. I have Mr. Krakowski call Ms. Bach and make some fun, because this was all under the auspices of Mr. Brown.
Yeah.
So there's been a turnover. So if we could reopen that dialogue, I can take something to both the city commission, and once we work out something with Ms. Bach and Mr. Krakowski, we can hopefully move this forward and put it to bed.
I'll entertain any comments from the other commissioners, but frankly, I'm all for doing this.
You know, we agreed to do this.
Yeah,
back then, and all we asked them for was a letter, state.
Oh, that's harmless.
hold us farmers, everything happened.
And
And we never got it. We talked to Ms. Bob.
Again, we'll work with each other.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they struck out the part where they didn't want to be responsible. They told us no. And that's all we had.
I'm not sure if it was up where we were concerned about. And then again, moving the channel back, if for some reason the court says we gotta move the channel back.
Yeah.
Or you wanted it moved back, it'd be your responsibility. But we can work that out in agreement.
Yeah, we don't.
And actually, with regard to the core, Mr. Chairman, it actually is in the city's permit to rebuild it. It says that should the marina have to be moved, or for navigational purposes, either we'll have to remove the marina or we'll have to relocate the channel.
Yeah.
So that's in the permit, and again, I'll have Ms. Fox talk to Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, we'll be glad to talk to Tammy and get things worked out.
Yeah,
Let's get it done.
Yeah, we're all for it.
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. Thank you for coming.
You have to talk to Tammy about it.
Yeah, I know. We'll do it again. That's all the comments for tonight. Next thing on the agenda is approval of minutes.
Can we address, I'm sorry, Chairman Coleman, are we allowed to address some of the comments in the, about the price chip in the?
We're gonna get to that
direction?
later in the evening,
Okay, okay.
and we will certainly. Okay. Approval of minutes. You want to take them both together or separate? All right, make a motion.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as they stand. I didn't see anything in there that needed to be corrected when I went through it.
Motion been made to approve both sets of minutes for September 8th and September 22nd. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carried. Pierre, you're up.
So you have the September treasurer's report in your packet. Obviously, September is the last report for the year. We start the new fiscal year and the new budget with the next report. If you look at the bottom line on year to date, we're a little bit better than we thought we would be than the budget. Most of that is because legal fees were a little bit less than what we put in. You'll see the board attorney spending. That's about it. Custom house is cruising along. Electricity and cleaning fees are all that go on there, and then obviously the balances in the accounts. We have received the maintenance fund will be going up by, we did receive $45,000 for the January through September maintenance. So the maintenance account will be going up by $45,000. Shortly. Into this month. So that's my report.
Any questions of the financial report?
Where is the maintenance coming from? The maintenance.
That's the $5,000 fee paid January through September.
Yeah.
2021. They set the money. So
All right, there's a item on here, amendment. Roseanne, is that yours?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Tell us what that's about.
Yes, I want to ask the board to consider adding more hours to the administrative salary or changing the budget for administrative just for till the end of this month, because it is taking me longer to do all the tasks than budgeted.
We understand that.
Amen.
So
Tell me what you're going through.
I'm asking for 360 additional hours. And that's an addition of 8,816.54 cents to the budgeted
Is that- that's for
administrative.
how long?
that's for 3 months.
for 3 months, until the end of this year.
Now, I'll just say there may be more than that needed, because obviously if this grant every invoice has to be copied, every check has to be copied. So there's a lot of documentation that needs to be, most of that will fall on Rosanna's shoulders as far as gathering that documentation to support the grant for any reimbursement through requests. So there'll be quite a bit of additional.
And there's gonna be a lot more work she's gonna have to do. There's a lot of public record requests we've got to respond to.
So,
And make copies of things, and so. But
Make a motion that we. She's spending a lot of time trying to keep up with.
20 hours is not enough to do what she's doing.
How many hours will that put you a week, Ms. Williams?
Per week, that is 30 hours.
30
per
hours
week.
a week.
So 10
10 more.
10 more.
10 more a week?
Mhm. And that gives me, right now, if you cut it down to days, that's 4 hours per day. And with the 10 extra hours, it'll give me 2 extra hours per day.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yes.
and you're a blessing. There's a motion to increase her hours by 10 hours a week and all the other financial that you threw out there. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Thank you.
All right, we've got an interesting court attorney's report tonight. And I'll let you take over from there. Yeah,
All right. We'll take care of business first.
okay, yes.
So we have our hearing in front of the Value Adjustment Board was supposed to be Tuesday, but the attorney for the property appraiser's office had a personal matter to deal with, so we've been rescheduled to November 16th. So I didn't talk to anybody about that. We were prepared to go, but we'll do a little bit more work, sure, over the next month. That we're there. Jumping ahead a second, we also on the 16th, is a hearing on all pending motions in the Chip Ross Public Records litigation. So there's some outstanding motions that Mr. Ross has filed and that Nassau Terminals / Worldwide Terminals has filed that haven't been ruled on, and so those are going to be heard on November 16th.
Which courthouse is that?
Here.
I
I think actually that hearing is Zoom, if I recall correctly, but I'll let you know. And if it is, I'll be good there. Speaking of what Rosanna just mentioned in part, we've got over 20 public records requests pending from Nassau Terminals, so we're actively working on that. I would encourage you all to cooperate with Rosanna. She's got a lot of work to do. We've gone over some of that. We are preparing cost estimates and handling it as diligently as we can, but they're numerous and voluminous, so we'll be working on those. I've mentioned before, in our City of Fernandina Beach litigation, our hearing has been moved to late January, so we're okay there. We'll continue to have some discussions with the city about that issue. Pierre's had some discussions with FDOT, so I'm not going to speak on his behalf, but we're working on finalizing our numbers and our plans, spending plans for the COVID relief funding, which also segues into the master plan that RSNH is doing. Chairman Fullwood has signed it. I have not signed it because we want to make sure we have a clear understanding that at least some of the expense can be covered by these relief funds. And Pierre was talking to DOT, so we're going to iron that out as quickly as we can to get that document signed and on its way. There's obviously a number of other issues we've been working on, which you all will discuss. And then my news is that I've tendered my resignation because I've been presented with an opportunity that I'm going to pursue. Sorry, my computer's in the way. But I'm going to pursue early next year. So I wanted to give the board full time to deal with that. And I've been speaking with the chairman about it, and we'll help put an ad out for that. I've reached out to several colleagues So we'll make sure you're where you need to be. We've got some time. But it'd probably be good to get somebody on board as quickly as we can. So you guys have unfortunately been through that drill pretty recently, and I apologize for that. This was unexpected, but an opportunity knocks you open the door. So
Absolutely. Don't blame me for that.
I'll keep on keeping on in the meantime and help you all get where you need to be.
We appreciate that. We don't want you to leave, but you gotta do what he's gotta do for his family, so. I appreciate that.
I've learned that lesson every day.
Yes, you did. You did. We all learn that lesson.
Yes.
I know you have some names, you mentioned to me some names, but, and I know all of us probably have some names we want to look at. And we'll get the ad done, if you put that together for us, and we'll get that sent out. It's okay with everybody, because we need to jump on this as quickly as possible. I do have at least one name here that lives on the island, it's an attorney that I want to look at too. And we'll have whoever applies, we'll have them come before the board, we'll talk to them, just like we always do. And we'll make the decision and go forward. Yeah. All right, any other questions for Pat?
So, to get a ad posted, how do you want to post?
No comment on that.
Sure. And I'm actually looking at it right now because I haven't looked at it in a while. I mean, my recommendation would be post an ad with the Florida Bar. Their job board, their website, their emails are pretty constant. It'll go out immediately. It will be picked up by other services such as Indeed and things like that. So I will, I'll chase this down before the end of the week and get some information on what that costs and what the time is. But that would be my recommendation because that's going to go to all bar members in the state. I think if you write up a brief description and ask for qualifications, I think that's probably the best thing to do.
I think Rosanna has a copy of what we did last time, so you wouldn't have to start.
Right.
I mean, obviously you can do that pretty quickly, but I'd like to be able to send it kind of around local bars
Sure.
in the port in Nassau County, just so there's additional paying for local lawyers. And then for the litigation that is ongoing, that this we know will not be resolved. Is your firm standing by to handle that, or how do you?
Absolutely. Yeah, whatever we need to do.
Even come up in January.
Yes,
We're going to do that.
if that's what you need. Absolutely.
And then we keep the terms of the engagement consistent.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other comments? All right, we'll get that done as quickly as we can. So we can do it. Let's move on. We're going to need a report from the operator. Chris, you're up.
Chairman, commissioners, you have your tonnage report in front of you for the month of September. Container tons and TEUs are up both this past month and significantly for the year. Got a 2,000, almost 2,500 TEU variance to the positive year to date versus last year. Craft board was up this month. Wood pulp was consistent, and we had a big increase from last month. This month's total tonnage, 33,341. We're running at 281,000 tons for the year to date, and that's about just under 80,000 ton variance to the positive. Rail cars were up this month, trucks were down. Thank you.
So the rail car is 188, average truck per day 33 instead of 36. Okay. Any questions about the tonnage report? Chris, we sent you an inquiry about someone that wanted to possibly do business with us from, I think the company was called Latin Pro. Did you reach out to them?
Sure, I haven't called, I'll check my emails. I'm not sure that there was something that we would do.
Rosanna sent that to you, I believe. From a Mr. I don't have the name, but it's Latin Pro is the company and it exports going to Latin America. And shipments to Ecuador.
Sure, we'll follow up with it. I'll check my email.
Might have been coffee, I'm not sure. Chris also asked you earlier this week for a list of port employees, the names. Are you gonna provide that for me?
I haven't been able to vet that internally yet, Mr. Chairman. The only concern would be their privacy, but I'll certainly get back to you on that.
Well, I'm not asking for a lot of information. I want to know the names, how many you have, who they are.
I have your request.
Thank you. Also, got a letter from Deborah Applegate. She is with the Customs and Border Protection, you know who I'm talking about. And she's concerned about the building, the Customs House. And I think you told her that the grant that you had applied for could possibly have funds in it to build a new Customs House.
That's correct.
And you said that OFA was seeking an architect for conceptual drawings. I don't believe we're reaching out to any architect. We haven't even discussed that on the board.
I've said to you more than once, Mr. Chairman, open needs as a first step.
You said we need it, but we
That's right.
haven't reached out.
She misspoke, but we need to get moving on that, as I previously advised.
Well, when we know we've got the money, we'll do that.
Yeah, but we don't know how much we need to spend until we have an architect give us a preliminary scope of work and the cost.
Any comments about that, board? Okay. Chris, there's been a lot of talk lately about communication. We just don't seem to be communicating with each other anymore for some reason, and I don't know why, except for attorneys. That's not the way this should be. I know you're angry about some things, but we've got to have better communication between us if we're going to exist. We're going to continue. I know security has some questions about communication with them. They didn't even know this cruise ship was coming in until the day before. I've been told that by general manager. He told me that yesterday because I called him about some things. So we just need to communicate, especially with security, a bit more than we're doing. And I don't know how you're going to get that accomplished. Communication is also a big problem with us. You submitted more than 20 public record requests for information. And I'm just not sure why. And I know what you're saying in the public record request, and you're entitled to everything that you've asked for. But you see what we're having to do tonight. We're having to give our office manager more hours to even respond to that. Some of those you could have asked us outright or come here and talk to us about it. You didn't have to have a public record request. And you know what the answer is to most of them anyway. There were over 30 notices that you've sent us in the last 2 months. So 50 plus communications that you've sent us that we've had to deal with. You know, I'm not sure what your aim is here and what you're trying to do, but you're drawing the line in the sand and daring us to cross it, but we're going to cross it because we've got to get this relationship a little better than what it is. And that's not the way to do it. So communication is just something we've got to get better at. And I got a question for you. certain things about this I'm not gonna talk about, but I want you to answer this question for us. You trying to sell the operating agreement?
I'm not gonna comment on that, Mr. Chairman.
Well, you know, it's in the paper. Everybody's read it. You know anything about that document that's circulating, so-called document?
I'm not gonna comment.
Okay. Just had to ask. Any questions for our port operator this time?
So I did want to ask about the cruise ship this weekend, unless that's coming up later.
You go ahead and do that now.
Okay, so is there a repeat contract for that, or is that a one-off? Can you tell us a little bit more about the cruise ship?
There's no contract.
Okay, so will they be coming back?
It's up to them.
Are
I'm not
we,
aware at this point whether they will or not.
how many passengers were there?
It was in the paper, Commissioner Hill.
How many passengers were there?
Have you read the article? I'm sure you had some role in that article.
No, I don't think she did.
55.
55 passengers. Okay, so, and then crew, is that total people that came off the boat?
The crew did not disembark, 55 people.
Okay, and they all traveled in trolleys?
That's correct.
Okay, and how did they move in and out of the gate complex? Can you tell us a little bit about that? About the safety concerns that were raised by the member of the public today?
This continued approach of trying to question how we do business is ridiculous. Okay, we know the business, you folks don't, especially our freshman commissioner, unless, of course, you want to take the time to come down and visit us at the port, like your colleagues have done over the years. There were no safety concerns. We followed all United States Coast Guard and U.S. Customs Border Patrol protocols. Both of those organizations, which have jurisdiction over security, were informed well in advance. We ordered additional security guards. The fact that the general manager didn't know about it until a day in advance is not an issue. We had the extra security guards that CBP asked us to have. The folks stepped foot on the dock and the trolleys were in position. They boarded the trolleys. The agent had provided to Customs and Border Patrol a manifest with all the passengers. I mean, we actually know how to do this sort of thing. I've been doing it for more than 35 years and we do it right. And so there are no safety concerns, nor are there any safety concerns with having a simultaneous cargo operation, as the area where the cruise passengers were discharged was physically cordoned off and protected from any incursion by the passengers. They returned to the gate with their shore passes. The guard made sure that the same people on each trolley came back. No pluses, no minuses. It's not an immigration system since the ship came from a domestic port to a domestic port. So there's no border patrol issues in terms of immigration. And it's as simple as that. It's not nefarious. It's not mysterious. It's just commercial business at a seaport.
I don't think that's what she was implying. We had somebody from the audience come up here tonight and ask about that very same thing. We were just trying to clarify that it was safe. There was no cruise ship. When they came in, there was no ship there to be unloaded or loaded at the time they came in. Now, there was when they left, but not when they came in. So there was no problem with safety or anything else. I'm aware of that myself. And everybody was checked going out, and everybody was checked coming in. So we know that it was safe, and it was a total of 45 passengers all told that went downtown. Some of them went downtown to shop, and some of them went on a river cruise. And I don't think that's a big deal myself. I think it's good for the city. We have more people than that come to Trent Festival and come to Georgia, Florida weekend to shop. Thousands more. And it doesn't harm the city. It doesn't good. So
Agree?
I don't have a problem with it, the only problem is you need to communicate with West Rock to make sure that situation doesn't come up where we're not supposed to be using that property for that purpose.
Right, and we have communicated with them.
Okay, good.
The language, you got it right in the article, Mr. Chairman, you said very specifically that applies to a permanent cruise terminal as opposed to a cargo terminal with an occasional ship. But we maintain open communications and an excellent relationship with West Rock, a client of the ports. And so we think we've got that issue in hand.
I think that's what it says, and that's what it means, that we don't have a cruise terminal.
That's correct.
So
Nor do we have any
might say
intention.
it's a cruise terminal because we let cruise ships in, but city doesn't have a cruise terminal and they allow cruise ships in, so. And they're small ships and I think that's good for the city. I really do. And as long as we do it safely and do it by Customs and Border Protection rules, getting on and off the ship, then I think we're perfectly fine. But any concern that anybody has, please contact one of your commissioners and we'll tell you what the story is. Don't listen to rumor. Because believe me, there's a lot of things out there that's not true. And I don't care what you read or what you hear. Get it from the horse's mouth. We know what's going on down there.
So I didn't know that that was going to happen in advance. If certain members of the board knew that was going to happen in advance, that's news to me. And I have two concerns with what I heard just now. One is stepping foot on the docks. I just want to understand, picturing passengers coming through a cargo terminal. I want to make sure that number one, they have safety, that they have safe egress and ingress, to the property, that they're included in our safety plan. Because I think public safety really is, a big part of what we do. It's not a point where I want to get down into the details. And to your point, I sense that you're very defensive with the line of questioning. But I do think that ultimately when there is a disaster or when there is a loss of life, that the public does look to us and say, why didn't you care about what the process was? And so I see that as part of what we do, at least ask those questions and to make sure that people that do have the technical knowledge, because to your point, we are just members of the public, we are just elected members of the citizenry, to make sure that people that do have that expertise are in fact, taking care of public safety. My second concern was with regard to West Rock. I have not personally asked anyone at West Rock. And if someone on this board has that relationship, I think we need to make sure that we cover that as a board, either through Patrick or, Chairman Forward, if you want to reach out, just to ensure that we have some understanding. If we need to have an agreement where we are indemnified for any future issues by the operator, because I don't think we've explicitly approved this. We haven't discussed what happens with the revenue. If it is an ongoing relationship and it does rise to the level of an ongoing use, and that is an issue, we haven't really fully vetted that. And so I have a lot of concern about hearing about this and knowing about it, and then rubber stamping it without really understanding what the implications are. And the fact that I really believe that no one on this board knew that that was happening. That is why I do have the concerns I have. And that is why I have raised some of those questions.
I agree with Michelle. I think we need some documentation from West Rock that we're in the clear with this, because if they do bring out some legalities about this out of nowhere, again, we're stuck in the cold with, well, I thought it was okay.
Well, I don't think they want property back. That's what it says they can do, but I will definitely reach out to them and I'll have Patrick reach out to them and address that concern. But I don't think it'll be an issue with them, but we want to make sure.
Yeah, we just want to cover.
We want to make sure we want to cover ourselves. And as far as other cruise ships coming in, I've got an article here from Southern Coastal Charm, American Voyages. It says 12-day cruise round trip Amelia Island. And I'm sure they're not going to spend 12 days here, but that's just a round trip from southeast coast to the Bahamas, delivers just the right balance of excitement, relaxation. Charleston, Savannah, offer a glimpse, and so they'll be visiting all those ports, but Fernandina is on that list. And so there are going to be more cruise ships coming in. I know this particular one is coming back again, at least once, maybe twice. And then there's, I think, another cruise ship coming in later on in the year. So,
Chris, is Orlando Avila handling this one, or who is handling this
Yes.
one? Could you confirm that for me right now?
Which one?
I can confirm it because I talked to him.
Okay,
He told me he was.
okay, so are you aware of that?
Which one?
Orlando Avila is handling this?
Which one?
Which cruise ship?
The,
The one that just
this
came in?
one, that he's just.
The one that the chairman read about?
Yes.
I'm not sure I'm aware of that one at all, so I would ask the
Yeah, no, I'm
chairman.
not talking about this one. I'm talking about the same one that was here. It's coming back.
Saturday. Okay.
And Orlando handled that one.
Okay.
But this one that the chairman mentioned, I'd like you to forward that to me, Mr. Chairman.
I'll give this to you.
Follow up.
So you're saying you have no knowledge of this?
Again, I didn't quite hear the name and the dates, but
It's American Queen Voyages. And they're advertising a Southern Coastal Charm 12-day cruise.
yeah, as was mentioned by one of the commenters at the beginning of this meeting tonight, the city hosts small cruise ships at its marina, and that one, I believe, is going to the marina, because I have no personal knowledge. We haven't made arrangements with that particular ship.
Okay.
So what was the name of the, I'm sorry, I drew a blank. What is the name of the one that Orlando's handling?
The Ocean Explorer.
Ocean Explorer.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Chris, how long in advance did you know that this cruise ship was coming in?
Couple of weeks.
When did security know it was coming?
As I said, the site manager knew at least several days in advance, and we had to order some additional guards for that day. So, you know, we had the coverage we needed. That's the bottom line. We don't generally give them, you know, super advance notice of things. We give them daily orders and weekly orders.
Okay.
Greg was also still out, by the way, with his COVID. He's back now, but
Came back Monday, didn't
yeah, as the facility security officer, he generally handles communications with security, as you know.
he? Yes. Any other questions? All right, let's move on to unfinished business. COVID relief funds. Any other concern about that? Pierre, you want to talk any more about that, or you said about all you want to say right now?
Did you get my email?
I did. You want to talk about that?
So I have the response. So I spoke to Dan Fitzpatrick on Monday. It's 2 o'clock on Monday before we could actually get together and speak. So to try and finalize some of the issues that we had, some of the questions we had, and how we move forward with this. So I have, not this one, the other one first. So I've sent you, so this is, so there's 2 items I sent you. So the first is this is a response payment plan, and this is, so if you go to that first page, go back to the middle of the first page. So right there, no, a little bit down, there, right there. So the wording here, so there's an issue where we have to justify the spending and things like that. So Dan was okay with this kind of wording as far as our justification for what we're using these funds for. And then, so if you go down now to page 3. So I put together, and we looked at it last time, obviously, after talking to Dan Fitzpatrick, we removed some of the legal costs, some of the travel costs, next page, to the table. Right there. So we removed some of the legal costs, we removed some of the travel costs, and things like that. But what we added was the security costs. So we've added the security costs. And I sent you that in a separate email of what's actually included in here, in these totals. But essentially what we have is the security cost, which is about 127,000, the Ocean High Port Authority salaries and things like that. So make up these amounts. So this is ready to submit if we want to submit it. So it needs to be signed by the chairman, and it's essentially ready to submit. So, and obviously once we, so this is a pre-submission, this is a submission of our spending plan. And this is where obviously once we do this, once we get these funds, obviously we have to send a justification of what we spend them on. And this is where we need the documentation, which Rosanna will have to gather, that shows here's all the actual outflows of these funds going to these various items. So so now if you go to the other one, so that's for the Oceanside Port Authority. As I said, I strongly encourage, kind of, we talked about it last time, that, there needs to be a component of this that is for the operations. In talking to Dan Fitzpatrick, obviously, the Port Authority of Nassau is unique in that most of these funds are going to go to workers. Okay, in most of the other ports, most of these funds are not going to be used for board items. Okay, so as I said, I think it's important that we include a component in here. And this is where, as I said, this is what was submitted by the port operator, which is, to benefit the employees, which includes training program or hiring program, and then which is what these funds are, the single and main purpose of these funds. So
Okay, could you go back to the previous slide? Previous page. Just scroll up.
oh no, you're talking about, yeah, that's it for that page.
That's
Oh,
This is
okay.
the spending
Go back-
plan
go
from-
back to the previous
So
slide.
yeah, this is a spending plan so this is Worldwide Terminal spending plan for their
Right,
employees.
that one's for Oakland.
Yeah, so this is for
Okay, and this is from March 3rd to present, to today,
October 12th.
right?
So
Yes,
that's the first column.
And the
The
second
second column is the
is
90 days
90
forward.
days ahead. Okay, and the grand total will be 420.89.
Mhm. So I think we've already, so you saw my notes. So obviously there's no advantage. So on the 90-day spending plan going forward, there's going to be a lot of emphasis on achieving the spending plan, even with, the costs that have been submitted from Worldwide Terminal. If we include those, we want to be careful to only include costs that we're actually going to be able to achieve in this spending plan in this 90 days. There's no advantage, as I said, to including costs that are in question or anything like that. So something like we've discussed, the port the development director position. Okay, again, so had a commit with Commissioner Hill about that position and how long is it going to take to fill it, finding someone to take that position, whatever. Could that happen in 60 days? Could that, could it be 120 days? So we haven't included any of those costs in here at this point, because again, so it's easier to go back and ask for additional funds under the grant than it is to, as I said, not achieve our spending plan, our
And
90-day spending plan.
the master plan money is not in there either, is it?
So that's where we're waiting on, Dan Fitzpatrick had a question about whether we could use it for master plan. So,
I know we have a grant for part of the master plan. And the
Correct.
operator is supposed to pay the local share of that grant. And he just said he's not gonna do that, he doesn't have to, but we think he does. And we'll find out if he does or not, but if he does, we've still got $70,000 we need to spend above that, above the grant money.
so obviously, the
You
300,
can't, I guess you can't do that until that's.
well, I mean, the 305,000 is money we've already spent that we're being reimbursed for.
Right,
So those funds will be available for other items.
right.
Obviously, we've already
exactly.
paid, we already paid 305,000. We're asking for
That
reimbursement.
gets back into the budget.
So even if we were not to get, because for some reason, under this grant, again, data comes back and says, no, we don't think a master plan matching funds or anything like that could be on there. As I said, the 305,000 we're putting on here, again, is amounts we've already put out that we're being reimbursed for.
Correct.
So we can spend it elsewhere.
We will have that money in our budget to be able to do something else with it.
Correct.
So for the operating expenses, did you discuss line items with with DOT, just to.
He had, so if you, I sent you the email, he had already, so that, what we looked at the last
The
meeting,
master spreadsheet.
the line items, and that's where, as I said, obviously, Schedule 2 of the Federal Register, obviously are the regulations of what can be included in here. Things like advertising, we have not included. So a couple of things that we've taken out of here are the Florida Courts Council dues, because obviously that's a lobbying organization. We took out, obviously, some of the legal fees, because some of those fees are not includable. We took out, we had a little bit of travel in there, which in travel costs are specifically not reimbursable under this grant. So I believe we have, I mean, again, he went through the detailed list and identified some of the issues we had. So I believe, we're okay. So.
I just know that when we were talking about the federal procurement guidelines for some of the expenses for the future,
Mhm.
I didn't know if he had any hesitancy about any past expenses.
So if we are to reimburse, so contractor payments, so like Worldwide Terminals, any payments to contractors who are not employees or direct expenses of the Port Authority, in theory, payments to me, payments to Patrick have to follow the federal regulations. They're included in here. Same thing, as I said, with any payment to Worldwide Terminal, that contract has to follow federal procurement guidelines. That was his yes. That was any kind of contractor. So if we Customs House, if we want to do work on the Customs House using this grant money, the procurement of those activities and our payment has to follow federal procurement guidelines.
Yeah.
What that means.
We talked about it. Well, I did include in the packet for tonight the RFP that the county is doing for their COVID relief money. And I don't know which page it appears on because I've been scrolling back and forth, but it's just the front page of their RFP that's posted online. They have a third-party bidding software that you can subscribe to get updates, but they had several national firms that have bid, and Taco and Marshall estimated that the cost would be between 3% and 6% for administration. But the beauty of doing that is that you don't have the concern about getting the money and then having the money clawed back, which is a real concern for this. And that was something we exchanged a couple emails, and Marshall basically said, yeah, getting the money is one thing, keeping it is another. But their RFP is out there on the street, and I think it's worth exploring whether or not we could piggyback, because it is, and maybe that's a question for FDOT as to whether there's any piggybacking for a smaller entity like us to join onto that RFP if they find, if they award it appropriately. It's just something to think about.
They're doing an RFP for a grant administrator.
Yep.
What did you say the cost was?
They estimate it between 3% and 6%. I don't actually, the information I gave to you was, I think at this point it might be about 5 days old, but I think the grant, the RFP period has now closed, so I don't know where they are in the awards process or the evaluation process, I should say.
Frankly, I think Pierre's doing a great job. I don't know why we need the grant administrator. Do you recommend we get one?
Obviously, I've read, so this is a contract, right, that we've signed. I don't do federal procurement grants. I don't do, so as long as it's simple and straightforward, the more we get creative or want to do certain things, the less my competency becomes. So, I don't do federal grants as part of my day-to-day work.
Mr. Hill, if you want to investigate that and look into it, see what the actual cost for us would be, Patrick.
I just want to say, with regard to the master plan, because I spoke to Mr. Fitzpatrick as well, my recollection is that what he was trying to figure out was whether we could use the grant to pay for local share. It
Mhm.
wasn't so much the master plan itself. And I spoke to RSNH and they confirmed in their review that they have complied with federal procurement through our process. So they were comfortable, but the dam was unsure whether the COVID relief funds could be used to reimburse for a local share of an already existing grant. So it wasn't so much the master plan, it was the funding mechanisms.
Well, and just in my discussions, if you go back one, so it seemed he had an issue with, because obviously I saw the master plan is falling under business planning. So the different categories that they've identified in this grant, one more, just up a little bit further. So under the business planning, planning expenditure line, he didn't seem to think that the master plan fit under that. So he kind of, that, so he wanted to check, and yes, obviously we were talking about the only matching portion or whatever funds that we would have to put in, as opposed to the state grant that we've already got. So again, I was a little surprised. I thought it was clearly business planning, but he kind of.
Well, and if we needed to provide him some language and convince him, whether, and it may be under operating expenses, just as part of our effort to be more efficient and expand and all the things they want to address in the master plan, if we need to create some additional language and dialogue with him, then we can do that.
And so I sent him an email this morning and I just haven't heard back from him. Obviously, we only had the discussion at 2 o'clock on Monday. So, so I'm assuming he's still researching it.
So one of the things that we kind of talked about the director role as well, and whether or not we could advertise for the director role under this funding. And I've just been thinking, I want to hear you all think about it, about a recovery director. Someone who would see us through the next, 12 to 18 months. And maybe a shorter period of time, but an interim person that would, at the end of their time, they would help us identify a long-term director for the port. But they would really be administering all of the transitional things that we find ourselves dealing with. Because we have a lot of issues. We have, a lot of things that feel like fires that we're putting out all the time. And we kind of need someone that's an interim just to kind of take an analysis of what's going on and help us get through the strategic planning process, help us get through a lot of transition periods for the future, the current transition period.
I'll just say, obviously my view has always been that, I don't know that we can offer a full-time position. This is a fixed term position. Depending on the salary we're offering, this will be a 2-year contract. At the end of those 2 years, once these funds run out, we have no funds available to continue to pay that person. So it's no matter what. As I said, if we were to hire someone in this position, it would be essentially we have funding for 2 years after that.
Let's figure out a way to pay it.
That's an idea. We need to explore that.
Definitely pretty good.
Someone with board experience, someone with operational experience,
Somebody that might not want to commit for a long term, but would commit to it.
someone who might have left.
I've already got a couple of names in my head that might want to do that. So
Yeah.
I'll talk to them.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's a good idea.
And so if we have that piece, then the grant administration piece, we would want to procure that appropriately, right? So we have to make sure we can reimburse that piece of it. But the grant, getting a grant administrator, it's a percentage of the total grant amount. So I don't know if that's something that you all want to consider, but we have lots of other grants. So if we do identify a good grant administrator, that might be something that, we could use more regularly.
Yeah, down the line.
So with these awards, you can identify a grant or just like you would an engineering contract, you have a continuing services agreement, and then you get the, go through the RFP process, do the bid, and then you have a current contract that you can rely on every time you need it. So every time you have a grant opportunity, you'll be able to say, oh, we already have a properly procured contract with this grant administrator. Let's use them for this US DOT grant because it has 74 regulations we have to comply with. And then we don't have to put that on our lawyer. We don't have to put that on our accountant, we don't have to put it on Rosanna. It's already been procured.
So,
Okay, explore that and
I
come back
will.
next month.
So I will
Next
find
meeting.
out about the piggybacking on the county contract, which I would ask.
Okay. Any other comments about this? All right, we'll just keep moving forward. Let's go back to what the operator is asking for, please. Bottom line. And I can't read that from you. Or what? Let's say 485.
Yes, 485.
That's more than the entire grant. Combined, the two is more than the entire grant.
I don't have one more thing. on
That's
that.
900,000. We only got 806. Yeah, 806.
So,
Yes, and I haven't looked at that completely to see what they're asking for, but Chris, I want to ask you, are you still saying you're not going to pay the local share of the Port Master Plan grant?
It's not a question of me saying that or not, Mr. Chairman. We looked at our bond fund restrictions, and we've come to a conclusion. It's pretty clear that they can't be spent on a master plan. So that's new information, and that's caused us to have to change that decision.
Could you get that, could you forward that to us so we can see it?
We'll have our attorney send you a letter on that.
Yeah, he's good at that.
Yeah, but in the meantime, I'm happy to discuss the details of what we've submitted. I know Pierre just had a chance to get it to the commissioners today, but this is exactly what the future monies were intended to go for, which is the port employees. And we have a breakdown. Job training is approximately $100,000 over the next 90 days. The cash transfers to employees is $260,000, but what that consists of is new employee hiring bonuses of $2,500 for up to 20 new employees, retention bonuses of $5,000 per worker for 52 workers, job training, including outreach to trade schools, local high schools, and other potential sources of jobs is $100,000. COVID supplies and maintenance is part of that. And so we've given you the breakdown, wage increases since July 1st to the end of the year that we've already put in place, and women are receiving that is $45,000. So that's the breakdown of the 485. Obviously, it doesn't necessarily have to be that exact amount. We would hope that we would have dialogue with the board in good faith and come to an amount that you can have the requests and expenses that you're asking for, and we can have the majority of this. It's not for me to give you an opinion of the approach that you've asked Pierre to take. I would just leave that to you and to FDOT, although we do have a view of that. But the focus for us is the employees, as we've always said. We do have to add these employees. We do have to raise existing, and cash transfers includes continued across the board increases of several dollars per hour for all the existing employees, plus the retention bonuses. And all that would be documented, everything would be accounted for. And anything that wasn't actually spent, obviously would go back to OPA. So we're taking a professional approach to this in line with the spirit and the letter of the grant, and we hope that you're going to seriously consider this and include it in your spending plan. And the final point is that, again, under the operating agreement, there is a requirement of cooperation and working together to come to a mutual agreement on new sources of income, which this clearly is. We also, you should know, and we've gotten a couple of invoices that we haven't responded to yet, irrespective of whether there was any COVID relief money. under section 7.1 and 7.2 of the operating.
I
manual.
know all about that.
Okay.
You don't have to go over that. We've gotten several letters about that already.
Okay, well, it's nice to have someone to
That
read the
says,
letters.
we're gonna disagree with that, but we'll deal with that later. I've always said this money, some of it should go to the operator. I have no qualms about that. You should get some of that money. The breakdown you presented to us, I can almost guarantee you're not gonna get that much money. That we'll be willing to negotiate that. We'll give you just a bottom line, and you can do whatever you want to with the money. That's up to you. But we'll have a workshop to determine just how much we can give you, but I'm in total agreement with you.
Chairman Fuller,
Yes,
I agree with almost everything that you say, but I have to disagree with you on this. And I think that if we are going to commit to make a payment out of this money, that we need to decide how we're going to do that as a board. And I think that because of the structure of our relationship with the operator, as Mr. Gucci likes to remind us, he has procured a contract and he is a contractor. And he is engaged in a business and he reports to his shareholders, and these employees are employers of a contractor. And we can't pay someone else's employees without making some sort of payment through him as a contractor, which is essentially saying we're renegotiating the terms of our agreement with you because we aren't paying you enough to do what you're doing as a contractor. These are not public employees. Now, the port business is public business, but they are not port employees. They are not public employees of us. And we can take this money and give it to wages. I think we should give it to wages. I think we should commit right now or at some point in the reasonable future as to how much is going to go to jobs. And if we create a high-paying job in this interim director, that's a high-paying job. That's a great step forward. And if we work with our local nonprofits to provide gap medical help, and I mean Barnabas does this. I spoke with some folks about that. We can make payments to nonprofits to make sure that we are sponsoring programs that benefit port employees. They could have free COVID testing. They could have other free medical help through Barnabas out of a grant that we fund. And that's a way to support not only the community, but also the port workers. There are ways to do that. But I can't support giving $1 of this to the operator.
I just don't understand $100,000 to high school and trade school. In 3 months, you're gonna spend $33,000 a month with schools around here?
We have to set up a serious corporate program.
But
Okay, we have no such ability to do that.
but you have that set up? I'm saying you're ready for that.
We will set it up and provide the background. If the number is not exactly that, that's an estimate at this point.
I don't think that's something we fund.
So
That's-
I did reach out to the
category
chamber
grant.
about this because at the officials, which Vice Chair Cole is also in attendance at, I had the occasion to talk with some members of the chamber and former people with the chamber who are now with other local nonprofits. All do like in the community direct job training and placement. And Sherry Mitchell followed back up with me and she sent me the career source opportunity. And I had Rosanna reach out to Mr. Ragucci to ask, what postings we can publish. I don't, okay, so do we have something on
Yeah, I
that?
forwarded, Mr. Rigucci was kind enough to give me that list, and I forwarded that list to Larry.
Yeah, to have a list of the open positions, to have some communication, those are programs that we, OPA, could, do a grant to them and say, we want to help with this recruitment and training process for the benefit of port workers. We can make it very specific that we want, to train up more port workers, but I think we should have control of that.
I've had several people call me about applications, how to apply for jobs at the board. I've sent them the information and I hope they've gotten with you about, some of those have gotten with you about that.
They have, every one of them is vetted by our entire team, and we've been adding workers, so it's very possible some have gotten hired.
Glad to hear that.
We appreciate the referrals, and we've always asked over and over to each
And I
of
do
you.
that every chance I
I
get.
know you do.
All right, so what's your pleasure right now as far as our portion of this grant that Pierre's laid out?
I think we should do step one if Pierre is prepared for us.
and then negotiate the other
And
terms.
then figure out what the next step, once one gets approved, and go into the next phase. And then you're gonna know the ins and outs of what was, what wasn't, what was turned down, how it's being handled.
So you're ready, Pierre, to apply for that portion at least?
So per the grant, yes. As I said, if you want to get into what Commissioner Hill is talking about, this is where you're going to need grant administrator. Giving grants to other organizations
Yeah.
is beyond the scope of this.
We'll cover that.
As far as I know.
We'll take that up when we need to.
So
But right now, what you presented to us is what we're asking. We can do that now without any problem.
per Dan Fitzpatrick, yes, these expenses are
Okay, which-
operating expenses of the port, and they are reimbursable under this grant.
Excuse me, just one last comment, if I might. For all of our employees that are at home watching and nervously awaiting the outcome of tonight's meeting, so Commissioner Hannah, you're saying you'd like to move forward with Open's administrative reimbursement of expenses that have already been paid for by your revenues under the operating agreement, without including monies for the employees, because that's not an urgent requirement for the speedy and equitable recovery
I think we
from the
do,
COVID epidemic.
I believe we do it one step at a time. You got a COVID relief fund that nobody asked about or nobody cared about. That was to operate your
What are
business.
you talking about?
In the beginning, when it was COVID relief fund, you guys
We
applied
didn't
for.
get any funds, COVID relief funds. If you're talking about something else, maybe something
PPP
else.
fund,
There was something
PPP,
else,
that's
there was
different.
something else.
Okay,
you asked,
yeah.
and I can't
Let's
remember.
not split here.
So, Scott,
You got
you know what?
PPP
If
funds.
you can set up a training program for 100,000, we're happy to have open administrative.
That's
I
not,
don't think you're.
The money's supposed to go to the employees.
Stop right now.
Clear.
I ask you to stop.
This is an open forum, Mr. Chairman. Why can't we
It's
have
not an
an open
open forum.
discussion?
If I've got the gavel, I'm asking you to be quiet.
Is that right?
One or
Fair
the other.
enough.
One or the other. All right, now, I'm not saying that we're not in favor of giving the employees of his company money, giving funds to them, to Oprah, to the port operator. And we'll try to give what we can. And how he spends it, that's up to him. If he wants to give it to his employees, that's fine, but it's not on us. We can't give it directly to the employees. We're not allowed to.
Just one step at a time.
So I'll entertain a motion to
Move forward with.
move forward with our portion of that, and then we'll talk about the other part.
Well, we've said from the very beginning of this thing, that we wanted to repay the employees in some way. Yeah, we wanted to recognize that. That's all it's-
Okay, yes.
You've got $380,000 of unspent money ready to be drawn, but you're actually, I just want the record clear, this board is refusing to request that money on behalf of the
We're not
employees of this
refusing
board.
we're not refusing to request anything. We're just gonna spend what's already been approved, and then we're gonna negotiate with you about how much we can do otherwise. So that's where it is right now, and I need a motion.
I'll put a motion forward to move forward with Pierre's.
I need a second.
Just to be clear, the motion is to move forward with the portion that is the administrative expenses of OPA,
Yes,
and that's it. full
Right
stop.
now, right now.
yes.
Okay.
We'll hear a second.
Second,
Motion been made and second to move ahead with our portion of the grant funding, $420,000, $89.89. Any further discussion?
Now, can we go back and
Yes, we
tell us
can.
now again for what?
Yes, we can.
Do that.
Yep,
So
we got
we
time.
submit.
We got plenty of
And
time.
invoice monthly if we wanted to. So each 90 days, there's a new, but yes,
Yes.
up to the 806,000.
I would like to add to that, well, this is just the motion as is, but I think we need to commit to putting, the majority of this money directly toward employee wages. And I think that's reasonable,
Well, that's something we can negotiate. Let's handle our motion now. And
but I think we should make
the
that.
rest of
commitment.
that, we'll make that commitment to. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no.
No,
All right. Moving forward. All right, let's talk about port director recruitment. It's the next thing on the agenda. And from the discussion I heard tonight, I probably know what the answer to this is gonna be, but we've discussed last meeting, about a port director. We've had David McDonald in here from McDonald, Miller and Coleman. And we asked him, to possibly do a search for a port director for us. He offered a sum. Panama City paid $49,000 for their port director search, and he's offering it to us for $44,000. Do we want to go ahead with that or not at this point, or explore these other possibilities that Commissioner Hill talked about? I will tell you that a port director, the range that he and I talked about, is going to have to be in the neighborhood of $125,000 to $150,000. We won't get anybody for less than that for a full-time port director. And they're going to have to bring their own benefits package with them, because we don't have money for a package, a benefit package. And I know I've talked to some that can do that already, but do we want to go ahead or hold off on hiring this company to do a search? Comment.
Let's say we're gonna have to hold off. We ain't got the funding. I mean, we can't afford $150,000 salary, so it's kind of foolish to spend 40 grand and look for somebody we can't even afford.
And we don't know how much we can spend out of this relief funding grant to go toward that yet, do we? Or if we can spend anything.
For the-
Right.
For
Say right, yeah. Yes, we just talked about that, okay? So we'll hold off on that. All right, I'm sorry, Mr. Regucci left. We want somebody put port tariff on the agenda.
I've asked to stay on because we keep asking about the tug, and when the property appraiser came out to the port, he asked who controls, who sets the pricing, who is the captain, who pays the captain's wages, and the captain was there, and he wouldn't answer who he worked for, couldn't answer who he worked for. I'm not gonna say it was willful, they did get the answer. And so I still think we should know, we should publish what our tug rate is if it's an OPA property.
So to turn that in.
I gave you what the cost is, the last meeting. I did.
And then Mr. Regucci said that that wasn't his document. and-
Yes, it was. I can guarantee it was his document. Because
He said he's gonna change it when he needs to though, so.
Right.
But
so
we know.
he
that's
said he
the-
could
that's-
negotiate
Right,
what the rates would be, but that's the base rate. That's
okay,
what he said.
okay, well, I mean, in my
But-
mind, it's an open item because we
Yeah.
haven't confirmed with
Well, it
the,
should be
with the
in the
USDOT.
tariff,
that we
in the
can-
tariff.
Right,
Yeah. Even though other ports don't put it in their tariff, but they know what the rates are.
and we haven't
It's
updated
a
our
separate-
tariff.
It's not our, it's not their tugs, they have to.
Right.
I'll read something to you here. This is their quarterly overview that we have someone talk about tonight that they have to give out to whoever bonding people. And it said, worldwide terminals started the first quarter of 2021 very strong with the conclusion of the acquisition of the Fort Clinch tugboat. Securing this asset was a three-step process, and it named what that process was. So the Fort Clinch tugboat is a revenue generator. I want to know what that revenue is too, and I think that's our tugboat. Why not share that with us? Why don't we get that revenue? Where's it going? With predominantly fixed cost structure. The acquisition of the Fort Clinch will significantly reduce one of the major cost centers for worldwide terminals in both the near and long term. So I think we need to know what those costs are, what he's making. And according to the operating agreement that his lawyer keeps wanting to send letters to us to quote certain parts of that, they have to share that with us. We have to negotiate what they share.
I had a question.
Yeah.
I want to ask it before he comes off anyway. Pierre, when did you get the requests from Chris, that we went over today with the email with their monies in there, the $100,000 school funds. When did you get that from him?
Yesterday?
No, last week.
Oh, he sent that sheet over last week?
Yeah. I mean, I was waiting to talk to Dave Fitzpatrick, so.
With their share, the way they broke it down for them?
Well, I mean, he's looking at the same contract I am, right? So that's why he's broken it down into the categories that fit into the grant, right?
Uh-huh.
So he's identified where in the grant, there's grant money for rehiring, there's training, et cetera, et cetera. And so he's identified he's looking at the grant and identified where those categories would fit into there.
Where he picked out. So he sent that to you last week?
Yeah, I mean, so.
Okay, I just wanted to know what we got.
So can we ask Patrick to raise demand letter for this receipts or records relating to what is charged for the tug, what has been collected so far? Who employs the tugboat captain? What are the title documents? I don't know that we've ever received a release and satisfaction of our loan. If that's been, because that's supposed to be recorded. I don't know how that's done for a maritime vessel, but we have never tied all that up.
It's Patrick who do that. for us.
It's on this, it's on the list.
Okay. Any questions about the tariff? I'd like you to request also of him to have an updated tariff by December meeting. That's usually when Kenny Morgan was here, they gave us an updated tariff every December. And we looked at it, we discussed it, and we approved it. I think the December meeting is a good time to update tariff every year. If you add that to that, please.
Another question, I'm going back to the cruise ship, is that additional money?
Oh, yeah, that's part of the operating agreement that he keeps quoting.
So I want to, so we're going to get into the nitty
He
gritty.
calls it dockage and wharfage, but it's not dockage and wharfage.
Right.
It's extra money. Yeah. Extra business. And it has nothing to do with dockage and wharfage. Yeah, sure, they may tie the boat up, but we're not telling them to give us all the money. We just want
Yeah,
to
for sure.
negotiate.
Yeah,
portion of it.
absolutely.
But, no, he wants that. He wants our grant money too.
Right.
Okay. All right, operating agreement. Put that on here.
So we've kept this one on because we have so many issues with the operating agreement that we want to be able
Yes,
to,
we do.
basically catch all of these issues. So if you want to talk about the cruise ship and what we're going to take, what action we're going to take there, if we want to talk about any of the various communications with the attorneys.
Well, as I said at the beginning, we've gotten over 20 public records requests and over 30, I call them demand letters. Wanting information and telling us what we need to do here and what we need to do there, and quoting our operating agreement. But I think we're going to have something for him in the future. Yes, sir. That we will present to him and telling him what he may be in violation of or not fulfilling, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I have a lot of concern about all these issues about what portion of the business is truly port business
Yes,
and what portion of the activities going on are what Mr. Ragushi testified to in court was a separate business. So I really want to know, how much of what's happening at the port, when the property appraiser went out there and said he saw a bunch of that, he was told that was a separate business, that we didn't give him the permission to do that on our properties. And so that's to me very concerning. And I'm sure that's included in our list of complaints, but I'm glad that we're moving forward on that.
yeah. Well, it says on this financial report that he's taken in projected annual income is $9 million. So get money from somewhere. Right? Any other questions about the operating agreement? And you'll see something coming out soon about that, so just stand on. I'm gonna talk for just a second about our bond conduit. Marketing company, RBC Capital Markets. We don't need to retain them. They're already retained. Is that correct here? You know, isn't that?
Not retained.
Well, I mean, that's who our bond marketing agent is. I mean, that's who we use.
That's who we use.
If we needed to, we would
That's
turn to
who- That's
them.
who we go to. We
We've had a
don't need
long
anything
term-
formal. We need anything formal to retain them.
I mean, there's nothing, until we have a bond
Yeah,
issue or a bond, potentially a bond issue, they're the ones we turn to, and just because we've had a long-term relationship with them,
right.
could we go to someone else? Absolutely. I mean, so we're not tied to them in a contractual way. But they're willing to come answer our questions. They've always, over probably the last 10, 15 years, they've come over and given various presentations of what we can do, and obviously they're available if we were to have a bond. There's no payment or anything we do for those services or anything like that,
And they get a cut of that anyway, so.
if we issue bonds.
Yeah. if we issue bonds. Okay. I don't know, the city may need bonding. They've got things coming up. I don't know who they go to get a bond from, but that's something we might want to talk to them about. All right, let's move on. I'll put master plan on here, but we've already talked about the master plan. We've all signed off on the scope of work approval, except for Patrick, and we're waiting kind of to see about financing. So we'll wait till we get a answer on that before we move forward. But I think we need to move forward with that as quickly as possible. I'd like to get a new master plan in here. All right, let's talk quickly about additional meeting dates. We talked about that last meeting, and we have some dates, but the next date for our special meeting, Patrick cannot be here on the 27th. And Rosanna, is there any other day we could meet that week? Do you know? Have you checked? Would you check?
I checked with BOCC, and that's the only day. And she moved it from 4 o'clock to 2 o'clock.
On that day, but still
On that
Patrick cannot be here that day. So
Okay, so do you want,
I'd like to try to move it to another day. 'Cause I think we need to continue to meet twice. We just got so many things going on. We can't wait a month between meetings.
and you prefer around 6 o'clock always?
Well, if we can, but if you have to move it earlier, that's fine too. We can make arrangements.
Okay, I will
Just give me
talk to
some
her tomorrow.
dates. If we have to move to our office, we could do that too. We've met there before.
Oh.
For a special meeting, especially
Okay, so I
It's a
will
lot
check
smaller.
tomorrow.
for some of the things we're gonna need to talk about again. That may be a good place.
We did talk about holding meetings in other places for the county, so I know the city is happy to host us. They've said it many times.
Yeah,
We can do something west of it.
and we used to, do things west side, so we'll check on those too. Check on, I'll talk to you about that.
Okay,
No, so we have room in our office.
So just so I'm clear, for sure, you're not going to meet on the 27th.
No, we're not for sure. It depends on what we can put together, but let's keep that open for now.
But you said the chambers here was available at 2 o'clock on the 27th.
correct,
Yes.
on that date,
That date, except Patrick.
October
I can't
27th.
do during the day. It's. I'm sorry.
Well, we can't do it at our office at night. They won't let us stay there at night.
Right, no, nothing after
So
5.
we may have to find that Callahan Town Hall or City of Fernandina or Hilliard even.
Okay, I will,
We'll talk about that.
I will call
and see
around.
what's available. All right, let's move on quickly. You want to take a break or you want to move on to new business now? A lot of things on our new business. First pleasure. All right, 5-minute break.
One moment. Go on.
First of all, I want to thank the public for being here. We really appreciate you guys coming and speaking up, because we don't know how you feel unless you're here talking about it. You see what we have to deal with. You know, we're not gonna let anybody run over us. That's just not who we are. We're gonna take the bull by the horns, and we'll do the best we can, and that's all we can do. We have a very restrictive operating agreement, but we're gonna try and figure that out too, so just stay tuned, that's all I can do. Thank you for being here. New business. I was gonna ask him about several things, but since he's not here anymore, we'll move on. Employee recruitment, I talked to him a little bit about that. We've seen him several new applications, and I hope he's hiring. Navigation channel, the pilots needed some of the maintenance dredging done in the channel. I've sent a letter to the Corps of Engineers. I saw an email where he was going to send one. I was gonna ask him tonight if he had it done. He promised me last meeting he'd have it to me by that Friday. Never saw anything. I've asked him twice since. So he said today to one of the pilots that he would put a letter together and have it done today. So I have my doubts, but that's where we are with that. And I know the pilot was gonna send one in also. So hopefully we get that maintenance dredging done.
So can we do that directly if he's not responsive? Can we have Patrick?
Well, I've already responded to the Navy about that, sent a letter, because that's who the Corps of Engineers told us to do. What they told us to do is a good letter. But he's supposed to define more in terms of what it would cost if it didn't get done, because the pilots would turn ships away because they couldn't bring them in. So whether he's done that, but we can request Patrick to send a letter to make sure he's done it. And
So we just
send us a copy of
So
it.
basically be every ship that has to turn in the basin.
Yeah, there are some ships that draw more than others because of the weight. And the pilots will eventually refuse to bring them in because of that.
Is that something the harbor pilots can do for us?
That's what. Yeah.
So they could maybe provide that statement for us. and then
Well,
we
they're
just-
gonna Brian was gonna put a letter together, Brian Super,
Okay.
to the harbor pilots and send it in also.
Mhm.
So we were all supposed to get a letter together, and they were gonna send it to me, and I was gonna send all 3 letters. But never got one from Chris, and Brian said yesterday that he had one together, he would send it.
Okay.
We're having to do it separately, whether
Because I know that.
the port operator sent his, I don't know.
So I also
And I will find
recall, I also got a call from the harbor pilots, that it gets to the point where they can't turn vessels
Right.
because we haven't responded to the Army Corps. If there's a way to go ahead and issue the approval and explain the situation as it is.
Yeah.
And then if they can proceed, I mean, I would hate for that to basically prevent business.
Well, it's not really in the turning basin, it's where one of the buoys is, close to where the buoy is, and he explained it to me where it was. And Corps of Engineers knows that, so and that's just maintenance dredging, they'll go drag it, not that high point down, and that's all that is. Any other comments about that? All right, port security. I'm gonna have our attorney send a letter to the port operator about port security. I was out there the other day before the cruise ship came in, talking to port security, Allied Universal. We have a continuing contract with them. It's on a monthly basis. There are several outstanding invoices that have not been paid. I was told by the operator that those were a 60-day term. I talked to the general manager today. It was yesterday. My days are running together, but in the last day or two, I talked to the general manager and he told me that it's net 30 days. Contract says 30 days. He says he hasn't been pushing it that hard. The because eventually he gets the money, but I think it should be paid on time, net 30 days. And I've got invoices here from August, September, all the way to September 30th, totaling $41,993 that he has not paid yet. And he keeps telling me it's 60 days net. Well, 60 days is past for August.
Yeah.
So please send a letter to him requesting. Yes, you can. Now, I think Rosanna, he told us he paid the vehicle inspection fee for the tugboat.
He asked Pierre to,
And Pierre, you told me that you hadn't cut the check. Is that right?
Then it was put in the mail several days ago,
Okay, very
as soon
good.
as we got it.
So that part's taken care of at least. All right. Okay, but in talking to port security, I went in the guard shack. There are security cameras all over the port. Those security cameras are monitored by the security at the gate. There are security monitors in there. 10 of those monitors do not work. 10. I looked at every one of them. They're not working. 10. There's one that's got water in it and they replaced it or fixed it. It's upside down. The view is upside down, so that's something we need to discuss with him also, Patrick, please.
How come they haven't notified us of the security cameras? Because we paid, Worldwide paid us, and we paid them still.
Yeah.
So I mean, the security people should notify us. If they have a problem.
They called me and I went out and looked. So yes, they've notified us, basically they've
So
notified us.
when they notified you, you done something about it.
Yeah, I went out and looked at them and I'm reporting it tonight,
Because I think we've got 27 cameras on that,
but 10 of them don't work.
don't work.
The monitors don't work anyway.
So
Yeah, go
do we
ahead.
need to make an investment there or make some decision?
That may be something we could use COVID funds for.
Is that in the contract? So what, I'm sorry for not clarifying. Do they provide the cameras? Do we provide the cameras? They monitor the cameras or the backed up? Do you know what happens?
I'm not sure about that. I'll investigate, but I'm not real sure who provides that. Apparently, port operator.
I would say that the port operator is responsible for that.
We provide the cameras because we put them in.
Yeah.
All at one time, and I think it was 27. we put in.
But knowing that there is a deficiency and port security being what it is, we need an immediate response to that.
Do you recall when they were put in? Commissioner Franklin?
Oh, they've been there a long time.
I'd say they've been there about 6 years.
And they're supposed to be monitored at that front gate. Where
Yeah.
security is, so they can see anybody coming in anywhere.
How long have they been out?
He says, for a while. He didn't say
But they
exactly how
just have
long.
notified us?
Yeah,
So is that is the security, you're the security committee?
Yeah.
Can we get the operator, or not the operator, since he's not here, can we get the security company to maybe give us a quote? Obtain a quote on the cameras?
I'll ask for that.
And if they're only 6 years old, 7 years old, that's.
There we go.
Chairman Fuller,
Yes,
question. Can you get a written document of the issue with the security cameras from?
I have a document that they provided me with all the problems that security is having, and I'll produce that by next meeting.
Okay.
Yes.
And
I'll
if
try
you
to
could
send it
forward
out,
that
yeah.
so I could file it. And
Absolutely, and I will tell you some other things.
And these security cameras should be repaired under the maintenance. On the maintenance.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, we'll work on that part. Communication, I talked to him about communication. The guards did not know till 2 days ahead of time. I've talked to all of them. They didn't know anything until 2 days ahead of time. They had to call on one more guard to man the gate because they only put so many guards on a ship. And that they had to call in an extra guard for that day just to do that. So they had to work overtime, come in on Saturday to work. So they did not know about it. He's not communicating, and that's the problem we're having. He's not communicating with people. There are also the gates. Those gates are supposed to be electrically controlled. There are motors that go to those gates. They're not. They don't work. When I went in there the other day, there's a button they push in the guard shack to open the big gate where everybody drives through and they check identification. They have to go out and manually open and close that gate themselves. The button doesn't work. And I asked why, and he says the motor just doesn't work. They've worked on it, but it doesn't work. I looked at the wiring myself as a former electrician. I just wouldn't let me look at what's going on here. It might be a box or something needs replacing. So I went and looked, and it's an extension cord that's plugged into the plug on the back of the wall. And it goes under the guard shack, in the ground, under the concrete. They cut a hole in the concrete that goes over to the motor and ran that extension cord and buried it. And that's what runs that gate. That's not code. I'm sorry, but that's not code. I don't know how long it's been that way. I'll find out. But that's just another issue. There are gates that a truck ran into, and they use containers to block it at night. The gate doesn't, there's no gate at all. There are security signs that you can't even read. They're so faded out. Now, I understand from the my security contact that reports to me every month that those gates will be fixed, those signs will be fixed. They've got them ordered, they just haven't come in. And I've got pictures of those. I don't know if it's the city or the fire department that goes out and paints the fire hydrants around the city, so they're easily seen. There's one on the port. I don't even know about it, but there's one on the port. They went out there to paint it the other day and couldn't find it. And the reason they couldn't find it is covered up with bushes. I've got pictures of it. It's covered up with bushes. They finally were able to find it, and the guy says, I'm not going in there to paint that. So he just left. There are steps, a series of steps that go up to that fire hydrant. They found the steps, that's how they found the fire hydrant. But
So it hasn't been tested.
No.
I know the city did go out and do an inspection of the fire safety system. I don't know if that would have been included.
no,
Okay,
that was a warehouse.
okay, and then we submit our safety plan, right? Like, or the operator submits a safety plan
Yeah.
to the Coast Guard or to the city.
Don't they get approval from the Coast Guard on their safety?
That I'm not sure about.
Okay. Because that, I mean, I hear laughter, but that's, I mean, if there was a fire or a chemical spill or whatever, that is, I mean, it wouldn't be funny.
Well, if they had to come out there and hook up to that fire hydrant, it wouldn't be able to find it, didn't know where it was.
Yeah.
The fire department should have been checking that when they do the annual fire inspection. They check. I had to put a dry fire hydrant in, and they come and check mine.
Well, they could find it.
Yeah, but again, I mean, they haven't been checked that if they couldn't find it.
Yeah, it hasn't been tested.
It's supposed to be marked with a.
Okay, I've already talked about the link.
So on the fire hydrant, I just want to move on until we figured out what we're gonna do. Can we follow back up with the fire department and ask if they have a sub who does this, that we can reimburse them? Or, you know, if they have a subcontractor that usually clears, you know, vegetation around stub outs or hydrants. If they're in the right of way, it would be the county, it would be the city, but it's on port property, so I mean, if we need to go into our maintenance budget to pay a few $100s to go and clear away some bushes, I think we should do that immediately.
I'll call the fire chief and ask him what the procedure should be and who's responsible for that. We'll see if we can get it taken care of.
It should be tested for operation.
I know the fire chief person. Right, I've already talked about the delinquent invoices, so we'll move on from that. Deed restriction, we talked about, it is there, so he needs to make sure that's clear. Port Clinch title registration request. Captain employment information. Is that yours?
Well, there are several things on here. So just to go back, number one was employee recruitment and status report, which was to be provided by the port operator, and he left. And so he's not reporting to us on the number one thing on the new business, which pertains to employees.
Yeah.
No, he's not. I don't know why he would leave. Maybe it would be Roman numeral 4, maybe it would be others down the list, but that was requested by the property appraiser. That's been requested in public records requests. We've requested it multiple times. If we don't have it already on the list of demands, I think, just to reiterate, I think we need to.
Well, during the break, I was told how much he charges for that tug. I'm going to confirm that. And it's a lot of money.
A lot more than what he told us.
It's a lot more than what he told us, and it's less than what they would have to pay if they got a tug out of Jacksonville. But even if there's like the Summers Island usually doesn't need a tug. They don't have down at that port, they've got bow thrusters, and they can do that without a tug, but he demands that they use that, and he gets money for that. And I know how much. It was just tough. So we'll look into that also. Maintenance report to be provided by the operator.
That was on the tug.
Yeah, that
Maybe it's
was,
just mine too.
was that on the tug or was that
Yeah,
on
that's-
all the
that's-
equipment?
I think that's
You asked something last meeting about,
the maintenance for the equipment should have been elsewhere. But I don't see it on
Brought
there.
you a stack of maintenance reports. Oh, excuse me. Brought you a stack a few months back about all the maintenance reports.
big,
All the
big
equipment, the whole big stack.
Right.
Rosanna has that.
So he did, and I did bring that up at that meeting, and I would like to keep bringing it up until we get a report, because when we were going through the minutes from the last 2 meetings, we requested an actual report. What he gave us was a red roll full of invoices. And that's not the same thing as a report. A report would say, these are the VINs for all the pieces of equipment you own, and this is how many hours they have, and this is the maintenance we've done.
What was spent, when it was spent, how-
And but then we'd also know which equipment is ours. So when the property appraiser was out there, he said that was the most concerning thing, was that no one seemed to know what we own. And so a report would give you a list of what is ours.
Oh, yeah, what's ours and what's his. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, the next thing is report on status of corporate espionage, and he's not here to tell us that, but I can tell you there's nothing that has been done about that yet. It's been turned over to proper agencies, but there's no decision that has been made yet.
So my question is going to be, and just for the record, at the meeting that this came up, I don't remember if it's the last meeting or the one before that, Mr. Rigucci said that he believed that one of our longest standing customers was a co-conspirator in this alleged espionage.
Yes,
And I wanted to confirm on the record that he is not pressing charges or pursuing any claims against one of our longest standing customers. He's not going to answer that question.
Right. I think he may be. We'll see where it goes. Next thing on the agenda, we're not going
And
to talk
I'd also like to
about.
go on the record that I don't support that.
No. Well, we just have to see where the investigation goes and what they find out, whether he was part of that or not. I'm still not certain it's espionage.
Well,
If it was, then something should be done about it.
I'm not the one investigating this, so I don't have to say, I'm not going to comment on the ongoing investigation, because that's not my job to say that. I think that our job is to make sure that we have new business coming in and that we monitor issues as they are ongoing. And I'm very concerned that I know other members of this board are receiving phone calls from all of the various contractors, others at the port, customers call and tell us, oh, there's an issue with the docks. Oh, a fender's hanging off. Like, they call and tell us.
Yes.
And if they have a fear that claims will be made against them. That's retaliation. And I don't think we should tolerate that. And until there's evidence that this is true, you know, I'm okay with going on the record that I think it's baloney.
What you said about that, where the guy was come up last meeting about being threatened by a couple of the guys at the court. Chris, don't want to hear it. You're not going to investigate what happened. You're just going to say it didn't happen. So,
Yeah. And I talked to security about that. They didn't know anything about it.
oh yeah, the threatening ban.
Nothing about it. Okay, the next one, Project Red Dawn, we can't talk about. Patrick has asked us not to discuss that tonight.
My recommendation is that you do not discuss the document that has been identified as confidential and business information. But, you know, the concept, I think you've already brought up at one point.
I did ask formally if he was selling the operating agreement. No comment. He was, you know, and other things, and he's got no comment, so he will not talk about it.
Yeah, my question to him was going to be, for the record, and for your thoughts on it, is how do you lodge a complaint of corporate espionage against a customer, but then don't comment on this other circulated and published in a paper story that you are marketing the port? Because if you are in fact marketing the port, it wouldn't make sense to have such a paranoid or protective view of people coming and looking at the port. And so to me, that doesn't seem consistent, and it's threatening to our existing customers. And then I just am curious if he is really truly that concerned about the espionage, if that is indeed valid, devil's advocate. Is he going to pursue an espionage claim against these alleged publishers of this pamphlet?
That they didn't know about.
If he didn't know about it. So that's my question.
Well, I know that information is out there. Other ports have it. So, but we're not gonna talk about that. We can't talk about it. Port truck traffic, that's you, Commissioner Hill, do you want to talk, what do you want?
Right, so several members of the public have called me, some have come to meetings and spoken about the truck traffic issue. I've added this to the agenda several weeks ago when we were collecting, you know, items for the agenda. The request was made, I think, at the meeting, as to whether we could use, or whether the operator could use a different parcel of land for the queuing trucks after hours, for a restroom facility, so that the truck drivers don't have to wait and park when the gates of the port are not open. So could they use Friendly Road, or could they use any of your other properties where they do other operations that support the port? And so I was just going to raise that issue, but we won't be able to.
Okay. I also think in the grant that he had, the federal grant he applied for, part of that was to open up a new route into the port through Escandia and around behind the port, the trucks coming in and going in and alleviate 8th Street, but there's still residents on Escandia that come in behind some of their property. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's something that's probably not going to happen anyway.
Are you talking?
There's as many houses on Escandia as there are on
Yeah.
Main Street.
Almost.
I think there's one more.
They were going to talk about public record request, how many we got, and then all the other stuff. But, value adjustment board hearing, Patrick told us that that's been moved to next month, the 6th. 16th.
If you don't mind, I'd like to go back, just because I know this is a really big issue of concern for the residents that live on Escandia. You kind of like touched on it, but can you just say something about whether or not that's even been validated, or if that's even something that should be a point of concern, or Maybe we brought it up,
Well, I think it's in the document, he applied, that it was in the grant that he applied for federal funding.
Yeah.
That's part of it, yep.
Right.
I think, yeah.
but we didn't approve that.
No, we didn't even see it.
Correct. And so I just want to be very clear that we did not approve that.
No, and I think that goes through land that can't be developed anyway, to put roads or anything else on. So that's something to take into consideration. All right, that's a lot I'd like to talk about, and I don't want to get into a lot of detail about it. The city has entertained a legislative proposal to change our charter for several things. We will have a discussion about that in the future. The legislative delegation has not designated a meeting date yet to talk about city issues and what they would take to Tallahassee. But we will have an answer to that. I guarantee you that we're going to fight for that, because there are some things in there that they want to change. And I think it's strictly about power control. They don't like the way we do things. And there are a couple of things in there I don't have a problem with. And I've got it right here. I've got the request right here of what they're going to do. And some, yeah, it's on your, I think I sent it, or
It's on the screen.
oh, it's on the screen up there. Yeah, okay, there you go. So there are some things that, like I say, I agree with. And some of those would be a development of a oil refinery. We're not going to develop an oil refinery. That doesn't need to be in the charter. So, but the thing that upsets me the most, we could have had a meeting and got together and talked about these things and come to an interlocal agreement more than trying to change the charter. But, if they want to go that route, they can, but that doesn't feel for good relationships with us in the city. I mean, why not come to us and say, we'd like to change these things. What do you think? Let's get a meeting together and talk about it. But that's not the way they handle it. So.
I think that the idea of taking away the eminent domain is a terrible idea.
I think it is too. And that's one thing I'll fight for.
I don't think any elected official who, any legislator in good conscience with the best interest of Nassau County would take the eminent domain authority away from any entity that can raise funds for infrastructure. Because if you want to put in a rail spur, if you want to put in a road, you have to be able to assemble property that is not for sale. And so that is necessary in order to assemble property for infrastructure. And I don't think any of our legislators would support that.
No, I don't think so either.
But I think that oftentimes negotiations begin with often including things that no one expects to win. And I don't really like going about negotiations that way. I would support the oil refinery being taken out. I would also support something that includes the modes and methods of coordination with the city and other local government entities like us who are elected and their staff. The statutes already require us to establish modes and methods of coordination, and we have not done that. And so we need to do that. And we've discussed that in the comprehensive plan for element subcommittee meetings. And the city didn't really have much to say about how that would happen. And we haven't really had much to say about how it would happen, but we need to come up with modes and methods of coordinating. One of the things that I've always thought we should do is have an advisory board. And the city is talking about establishing a port advisory board. We should have an advisory board, not the city having a port advisory board. We should be engaging with the community, and there are members of the community that come to meetings. There are, maybe, I don't know if it would be allowed, but could we have a port employee serve on this advisory board? Could we have past port people who have worked in Jacksonville who now live in our community? There's lots of talent in this town and in this county, and I think we should extend to the public an open door to share their ideas about what we're doing. I mean, there's obviously interest within the community about what's going on. But just, that is something that I would love to discuss or sponsor.
I agree. Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
5 years ago, this board appointed an advisory board to look over our charter. And we got 2 people from each district, 2 people from District 1, 2, all of them.
Plus other, we have 11 people on that board from all over the county.
Right. In
Commissioner
fact,
Cole was one
Mr.
of them.
Cole was one of them.
Yep.
And they only brought up one thing for us to change.
There actually was 2, but we didn't adopt one of them.
Which was what,
Changing the election,
what?
changing the election from party to non-partisan.
That was the only thing they brought up.
No, they brought up something else too. I can't remember. I'll have to go back and look.
If I remember correctly, only one thing was brought up, but again, 1 or 2, I mean,
They refused to recommend eminent domain be taken out. That, I know that for sure.
but I mean, every time somebody new moves in the city, they want to change it.
Yeah.
You know, so I try to put these, say
I
like.
don't mind changing things as long as you discuss it with the people you're trying to change.
Right.
And not just go behind our back and try to force it on us. That's just not the way to do it. That's not the way to be neighborly. And have good relations. So, all right, we won't talk anymore about that. We'll see what happens. Capital improvement plan, he sent us a public record request or demand to meet with him about the capital improvement plan. He said we have refused to do that. I've never heard him say anything about a capital improvement plan, never. And meet with us to do a capital improvement plan, and yet he blames us for not having one done. Right. So that's something else we're going to address, and I wish he was here so I could question him about that.
Should we just, I mean, we've added a lot of things to the agenda that we never received. So we can add this item to the agenda if he wants to present some ideas. That way we've provided him a forum to
If he wants
discuss
to
it.
have a meeting, we'll have a meeting with him. I don't think he wants to meet with us right now.
Or we could add it to the next meeting agenda, just so that it's on there.
Yeah, absolutely. You got that, Roseanne?
Mhm.
Cruise ship, we've already talked about. Florida Ports Council, I found out that when Commissioner Cole went to the Florida Ports Council, that there was a request for a grant from the Florida Ports Council for application for landside improvements. For I think it was $200,000. It's a grant that he didn't tell us that he was doing, another one. And they granted it. So he's got another grant now, and of course, he'll probably refuse to pay for our share of that, imagine. So that's something I wanted to question him about, and that's part of communication. He's just not communicating with us.
We have so many grants that are awarded for lots of different projects, and one of the things that the FMT has said is that some of the descriptions are very similar, but why aren't they being drawn down?
Yeah.
And
We have a meeting with FDOT every month, or almost every month, and they question him about that. Well, we're getting on it. We're getting estimates for that. We're getting information about it. The lighting grants for one. We got 2 lighting grants. He hasn't done anything. He hasn't put anything out there.
and so when you talk about all of the maintenance issues that you just did, it's really just, I mean,
Well, some of that, these issues that we're having with the cameras and such, that can come out to $4,000.
Yeah.
Because it's landside improvements.
That's right.
It's very vague what you use it for, but
Yeah.
that's what he could use it for.
that is a 25% local match. What was that grant called?
Landside improvement.
Okay, that's just the.
Yeah. Yeah, I got the number somewhere. I didn't bring it
And
tonight.
it's FDOT.
Through the Florida Force Council, but yes, it'd be through FDOT. If you go down to the port at night, you might not be able to see it in front of you because it's so poorly lit. I was also gonna talk about cleaning up the side of the warehouse. There's so much trash on the side of that warehouse. When the train's not there, it just looks absolutely disgusting, terrible. So I was gonna ask him to clean that up. That's, Patrick, that's something we might want to put in a request for.
Sure.
There is another Florida Ports Council workshop coming up in Tampa next month,
Correct, November 8th.
November 8th, and Commissioner Cole will be attending that. We can't both go, so he'll be attending that one. And there's probably some good information they're gonna talk about.
And I did speak with Mike Rubin, and he's encouraged me to be there, that it would be to our advantage if I was there.
Let's move on to committee reports. Port security, I talked to the port security person today, and he said the only issue was the the person that walked on the port, the espionage thing, and that was the only issue from port security. Customs House, Commissioner Franklin.
The air conditioner went out last week at the Customs House. They called me early in the
Yeah,
morning.
yeah.
And I called the AC man and repaired, sending us the bill for it. So taken care of before noon that day.
Who's paying the bill?
Do pay the bill.
Port operators should pay that bill. It's his responsibility. Patrick, would you look into that portion of the operating agreement, please, sir? Also, the cleaning service, we sent a bill to him. They sent it to the Customs House, and Customs House sent it to us, and we forwarded on to Commissioner, to Mr. Rebucci, and he refused to pay it, said it was our responsibility, but I think that part of the operating agreement says he has to perform maintenance, and that's part of the maintenance. So that's another one of the issues with the operating agreement we're gonna look into.
But
Which is why you sent that money.
on this air conditioning bill, to get people to fix these things immediately, we need to pay them. We might need to pay them and then discuss it with Worldwide afterwards.
Well, we're gonna request he pay it. If he doesn't, we will.
Well, we don't need to sit there for long.
No, we don't. I agree. Anything else? They are doing some repairs. They're doing some painting. They've done some scraping and painting. I think they've got the handrails in now.
I didn't notice it.
No,
Last week.
okay. I'll question them about that then. Anything else in Customs House?
That's it.
Army Corps of Engineers have already talked about. We got the information, at least I sent a letter into them about the maintenance dredging. I'll check with them tomorrow to see if everybody else sent their letter. Economic Development, Commissioner Cole.
Nothing really to report. At this point, there's some projects that are looking at Crawford Island, and there's not looking to see what's going on. But yes, we have 3 possible prospects.
Yes, absolutely, we do. So we may be asked to do a bond issue in the near future. Correct. Which would be some good income for us. We don't have to share that with anybody. Emergency Management, Mr. Franklin.
The COVID is down in the county, and that's about all I have to report.
Yep, absolutely. TCC.
Was
Mr.
canceled this month.
What?
It was canceled.
Canceled, okay. EPO, Commissioner Cole, is there a meeting coming up?
Tomorrow in the morning, 10.
Is that a Zoom meeting?
No, it's a in-person meeting. We did not have one last month. We are looking up for a forum.
So, what time of the year do they normally talk about allocations for between the different projects? When does that happen?
It's ongoing. It's never a specific time of the year that they do it.
When I go next month, hopefully it'll be on it. But I still have a list of things I'm gonna talk to them about with the TCC funding.
Yeah.
And how we get into more of the piece of the pack.
Like trails and
And this kind of goes back to the economic development piece. I had Rosanna circulate the metrics and that tool that the Nassau County developed about growth projections. And Nassau County is on track to far, sail past in terms of growth. And a lot of that in terms of percentage is that we have so much entitled land and so much undeveloped land at this point. So many rooftops already approved.
Yeah.
And so we really have to be aggressive with advocating for funding for infrastructure. Otherwise, we know how 200 was before
I
that
agree.
was
That's
completed.
why, yeah, I
And it takes so long.
Don't need any more rooftops.
With what?
We don't need any more rooftops. No, we don't. We need more infrastructure. We need more.
Rooftops, residential space.
As a, yeah,
Hey,
it
if
brings-
you read in the paper,
it
today,
brings
they went
in
up about
fast food.
$1,000 per 1,000 foot.
fast
On the
food
impact fee.
services and.
Car
we need
washes.
people, places, for people to work, with good paying jobs, is what we need.
Car washes.
Yeah, a lot of car washes and.
Well,
shopping
since
center.
the next item is the chamber, I'll just tell you that
Yes,
at
East
the,
Side Chamber.
so at the leadership Nassau program, they ran through all those statistics. And it's still, I think it's 64%,
Yeah.
62% of Nassau County
Leave the
residents in
county.
Hoover County.
Leave the county to work, 64%.
And then they have over, let's see, 697,431 online directory referrals from their website. And their jobs board gets, more eyeballs than I ever, thought an online portal would. So we should definitely post, even though it's like mass contacts, 700,000, almost 700,000 people being reached with their online directory, I thought was huge. They said in August they had 6, that's in 1 month. 700,000 is in 1 month. 6 bids for proposals, 627 visitor assistance hits, 36 people asked about startup or expansion of their business. And they had 754 residential relocation requests, to your point about rooftops. So and those numbers really are like staggering.
You can find a new house in a minute, but you can't. Well, you could sell your house in a minute. but
Yeah, you
can't
can
find a
sell
new
your
house in a minute.
Can't find anything.
All right, any more from the east side of chamber? All right, west side chamber,
Nothing to report on the website.
all right. City of Fernandina,
Yes, so I did attend the meeting where the city discussed their legislative requests.
right,
And there wasn't a lot of discussion, but it was a unanimous vote to
Yes.
support, to vote in favor.
bring it before the commission.
And I did ask Dale Martin, Manager Martin, to come and speak tonight. I'm really glad that he put that together. One of the things I told him was, if you come to the meetings and you present something, that's the start to moving
Yeah.
things forward, because I'm not always the best at paraphrasing what the ask is. And I'm just really glad that he came and did that. And whenever I go to the meetings, they always acknowledge me and, they want to engage. And so I try to go as often as I can in person, just to meet with the commissioners. I think it really does help.
But the meeting about the legislative request was at a workshop
Well, the way they're holding
But
the
they
meetings
presented
now, they have a workshop in
before the
advance.
city commission meeting.
Right, and
They
they
didn't
have,
talk about that particular thing at the commission meeting.
no, there wasn't discussion. They just voted on it as a consent agenda, I believe. Or they just adopted it without any public comment. So I think they
Still
actually
gotta have
could
public
still
comment.
discuss it at that point, but they just didn't have a public comment period.
It's gotta be public hearing.
Yeah, they had public comment during the workshop, I think, or vice versa. But they're bifurcating the discussion of public comment. I think that's how it goes. I didn't speak on the issue. I didn't feel at liberty to speak on behalf of the whole board.
Yeah.
And I noticed Mr. Rigucci was present for the first part of the meeting.
Yeah. Okay, moving on, administrative office managers report, you got anything?
Yes, I asked the board about the work phone, mobile phone.
Yes,
So I don't know if you want to decide on that tonight.
yeah, I'm in total agreement with it. I think we need a phone, instead of her personal phone to use and put our number on that. And
Yeah.
if she leaves, it goes to the next person, stays with the board, in other words, it belongs to us. And she has some quotes there that you can see. Any motion or any discussion about this?
Sarah, then just a little bit.
Can you?
Did Verizon have the best quote on
No, I don't think so. I think it was AT&T.
AT&T.
You probably, but the
BT.
coverage is.
I've been with Verizon for years. They got great
You're not all
coverage.
over- you're not all over the county.
Can't see.
Right.
95% of Nassau County has broadband coverage, while we're talking cities.
Yes.
I think that's pretty good.
So I don't know if we could submit that for COVID and the COVID. Because the phone at the office, I cannot call outside the 904.
Yeah,
So I have to use my own phone.
so you got Verizon, you got T-Mobile and AT&T.
AT&T.
Scroll up so I can see the AT&T.
The Verizon, the same than AT&T is 85.
No, it's not. Yeah, yeah. I see it. 70 and 85.
Yeah, but then down at the bottom on that AT&T, there's 60 something.
There's
That's a
option one,
4G.
option two. Depends on 4G or 5G.
Well,
iPhone
what
12
was,
and iPhone 11.
Do what?
iPhone 12 and iPhone 11. There's a difference. That's pretty expensive.
85 a month for AT&T and what's Verizon for 5G?
So the monthly payment is 70. I know it's option two would be 93.
I would also recommend getting the insurance on the device.
I was just gonna say. that.
Insurance. How much is insurance?
10, 15.
It's like $10 a month, but
Yeah.
if something happens to the phone, she would have a replacement, and she would still have to pay the contract.
I think we should let her make the decision on which one she wants to go with.
So the other thing Rosanna and I talked about
Put
was
it
all these.
all in your court.
Yeah, I would second that if we're voting. But she also talked about for all the public records requests, having a third party do a search for us, a data mining service.
And I sent a request for a cost estimate and I haven't gotten it. I haven't gotten it back.
Actually, I'm not sure if it's called data mining. It might be called something else, but it's like maybe document review or digital document review service, just because when I looked at like Florida League of Cities and some of these other sites that refer to me on responding to public records requests, one of the things they say is have a third party do the search so they can say how many hits, how many parameters, and there's no question that it wasn't a member of the board searching for the records. It might also be more efficient if there's less time.
Entertain a motion to let her spend up to a certain amount and let her decide which one she wants. The information she gets.
We're gonna pay these things in monthly installments like they got in there.
Is that the way you want to do it?
That's the way I would do it on mine.
That's fine with me. That's the way I do it.
And Verizon has got a 30-month contract, but AT&T, it knows 36-month contract.
36.
All right, do I have a consensus of the board to let her make that decision?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's all yours, Rosanna.
Thank you.
Any other thing?
That's about it.
Okay. Any other items to be brought by the commissioners?
So do we need to have a consensus for the data search third party?
Well, she's gonna give us the information of the cost.
Yeah, well, what we're gonna do, when we get that information, is we're gonna provide like a soft quote to the requester and say, this is what it's going to cost you to get these records if you want us to move forward. So.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Awesome.
Any other items? Meeting adjourned. Thank you all for being here.
Left. Chris, I've been here, we had a lot.